My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn with the Oklahoma State University Library. Today is Wednesday, August 29th, 2007, and I'm in Norman, Oklahoma interviewing Sherri Coale. This interview is being conducted as part of the Inductees of the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame Oral History Project. Sherri Coale was inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame in 2007. She is entering her 12th season as head coach at the University of Oklahoma. Thank you for joining us today, Coach Coale. Let's begin by learning more about you. Could you start with where you grew up and give a little background on your early life?
I grew up in Hilton, Oklahoma, small oil field town that's less populated now than it was when I was there 20 some odd years ago. Great place to grow up, typical small town involved in absolutely everything, from our church to our school to our community, and still have a lot of really important relationships there.
Now, as you're growing up, tell me about some of the schools you attended.
All the way,
Going all the way
Hilton
back.
was just Hilton. We had Sunset Elementary, and then I went to Hilton High School. And after I graduated from high school, I received a full scholarship to play basketball at Oklahoma Christian College, where I went from 83 to 87 and graduated with a degree in English education and physical education.
Now, when you're younger and you're running around at school, and what were some of the subjects that you were most interested in?
Oh, English. I love to read, so literature was big. Was really a math or science girl. I kind of had the other brain. Got into Nancy Drew mysteries when I was about in the 5th grade and read every single one that was in our little library that at the middle school was a converted closet. It really was. It was a huge closet just lined with books, and then began to branch out from there and bought books at garage sales. Anywhere I could find them, I bought books, and I just loved to read.
Okay. Now, outside of school, what did you like to do for fun growing up?
Played ball 24/7. Basketball, a little softball, more baseball than softball. Had an older brother. A lot of football in the front yard, both touch football and tackle with full pads. We did the whole deal.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very much a tomboy. And lots of basketball. Really got serious into basketball in about 6th or 7th grade, and spent almost every spare moment either on the outdoor court, in the driveway, or at the gym.
Now, when you're growing up, did you think that you were going to become a basketball coach? Is that what you wanted to be?
I wanted to be a teacher. And as I got further into basketball in junior high and high school, I decided that I would also like to be a coach, because the most influential people in my life outside of my immediate family were my coaches and teachers. So when I went to college and said I want to be a basketball coach, and I think I want to teach English along with that. So it was a teacher first, and then it sort of switched into basketball, and then there was a healthy marriage of the two.
Now, when you're younger, who were some of your role models that you looked up to?
Well, my 5th grade basketball coach was really my first hero. She was an English teacher, and she was our basketball coach, and she was married, and she had 2 kids, and she was a beautiful lady, and I just thought, she had it all. She was a woman, she was an athlete, she was a coach, she was a teacher, she was a professional, she was a mother, and she was really my first hero. Her name is Mary Patton, and she's a season ticket holder at the University of Oklahoma now, so how about that?
Is she still coaching? Or
No, she's been retired for years and lives outside of Ada and makes all of our home games.
That's awesome. Now, tell me a little bit about your family.
Raised in Hilton. My parents were divorced when I was really young, but both of them lived in Hilton, so I was able to go back and forth and to have as normal of a divorce life as you could possibly have. I didn't know any different, and both of them were very involved with my school activities as I was growing up. My grandparents, my mother's mom and dad, were very influential. They lived there in Hilton as well. My granny actually now lives with me here in Norman. She's lived with me for a little over 10 years now. So that's been neat to kind of go full circle with that. And my children have had the very extraordinary impact of getting to know their great-grandmother extremely well.
So family plays a big role in your life, both then and now.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Okay. Now, you said you went to college at Oklahoma Christian College. Can you describe what it was like being there as a student?
Yeah, Oklahoma Christian was a great experience for me. I just, it was really the perfect place at the perfect time for me. It was a lot bigger than Hilton, not nearly as big as the University of Oklahoma, obviously, but it was a very challenging academic environment. It was a neat place because all of the instructors knew your name. Everywhere you went on campus, as a student athlete, I suppose probably more so than a typical student, but everybody knew you. The cafeteria workers knew you. Professors in colleges that you didn't take any classes in still knew you as a student athlete. And so it was a very close, tight-knit group. Every day at 10 o'clock, we went to chapel, no matter what. You stopped what you were doing, and you went to the auditorium and sang a couple of hymns, said a prayer, and listened to a short sermon, and went on about your day. And at the time, when you're in college, you think, oh, I can't believe I have to go to chapel. I could write this paper, I could go eat a cinnamon roll, I could do this, I could do that, I could take a nap, sleep is at a premium. But as you get a little bit older, you realize that might have been the best part of every day. And I wonder sometimes as we're in this job, would we all just be a little bit better if we stopped at 10 o'clock and thought about things that really matter for about 20 or 30 minutes and then went back to work? We'd probably all be a little bit more efficient, so they might be onto something there. But I played basketball, I had a great career there. We played in front of packed gyms on a consistent basis, and just had a wonderful experience.
What was it like making that transition from playing high school to college for you?
Oh, it was incredibly difficult for me. I played 6-on-6 in high school. Thank goodness I was a forward. I got to shoot, so I wasn't too much behind the eight ball. But I'll never forget my first practice. We were playing 5-on-5, and they were setting all these screens on me, and I couldn't keep up with my guy. And I'm like, I don't even know how to guard. I don't know. I played pickup with the guys a ton, but nobody set screens and pickups. You just go and play. And so they had a good laugh, which they were accustomed to doing. It's those of us who came out of Oklahoma were all playing 6-on-6 at the time.
Now, in college, did you plan on becoming a teacher?
Yes. I wanted to teach English, and was really interested in writing and in teaching writing to young people, and it was a passion that flourished while I was at Oklahoma Christian as well.
Did you feel that there were opportunities waiting for you in professional basketball at that time?
No, I didn't even think about opportunities at the Division I level. I just wanted to teach and coach kids, and high school was all that I really knew, and then obviously had the collegiate experience. But it really didn't even cross my mind to be coaching at the collegiate level. I wanted to be a high school teacher and a coach.
Okay. So take me now from graduating to your first job.
Right out of college, I got a job at Edmond Memorial High School. I was an assistant basketball coach, assistant volleyball coach, had never watched a game of volleyball in my life. I was an assistant volleyball coach. I used to say, bump, set, hit. That's all I said over and over. Had to learn how to drive a bus, a stick shift, big yellow bus. Taught 5 hours of senior English, and I was 4 years older than all of my students. I had no planning period. And I said, yes, I'll take that job. I just jumped right at it. I didn't know any better. But it was a wonderful experience, mainly because of the people at Edmond Memorial High School at the time. Edmond was only one school, and just had fabulous people, from the superintendent to the principal to the guidance staff there at the high school to the coaches of various sports. It was just a great first opportunity for me because I had such an opportunity to learn from such amazing people.
Okay. And you jumped from there to Norman High School?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that like for you?
That was the biggest jump because as you get out of college and you go into an assistant coaching role, and taking over my classroom was one thing, but being an assistant coach, you follow along and you do the things the head coach asks you to do or believes in, and you're not responsible for anything, really. At the end of the day, if your team loses or a player develops or doesn't develop, you may feel that personally, but the buck doesn't stop with you as an assistant coach. And when I took the job at Norman, it was completely different. It was suddenly all up to me. And that was a huge adjustment, one I was ready for and excited about and jumped in with both feet, but it was a big step. I guess I was, 26 years old? I think I was 26. I might have been 24. I think I was 24. At the time, I was the youngest 6A coach in the state of Oklahoma, and not much older than my students, obviously. But again, Norman, just the people, from Nancy O'Brien, who was our superintendent, to Dan Quinn and David Gore, and just fabulous people. Tony Robinson was the boys basketball coach. People who helped teach me how to do my job, and it was just a blessing to be in the midst of those people.
During your time there in Norman, with Norman High School, you led the team to 2 championships.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like for you?
Hard to put into words what it's like. One of the most rewarding experiences ever. We went into my first season at Norman High. We were 11-12. We won 11 games and lost 12, and everybody was really, really excited because they thought we were good. And I was like, okay, I haven't lost 11 games in like the last 6 years combined. This is not good. And it was changing perception, and I think that's probably the most rewarding part of it. By the time I left Norman High 7 years later, the coolest thing you could do was play girls basketball. And the expectation level for the girls team every year was to win the last game they played. And so to see that perception change and that bar raise was just an incredibly rewarding experience.
Now you made the jump, and a few coaches have, from high school right into D1 basketball. Was that overwhelming for you? Were you shocked? Were you in awe? Were you ready for the challenge?
I was too busy to be in shock or awe. I think I was ready for the challenge. I tell young coaches now, I don't necessarily recommend that path because, the learning curve is steep. I was fortunate because I was in a place where I was familiar. I think that made a big difference. I didn't have to sell a house. I didn't have to buy a house. I didn't have to find childcare. My life, my personal life, was able to continue in a steady form while my professional life changed dramatically. And I don't know if you move in from another place, I don't know how you do that, really. So I did at least have some foundation there that I was able to operate from. But it was a huge jump. And again, people, Marita Hines as the point person, just making sure that I knew everything I needed to know on a daily basis. But it was, I look back at it, and you do this a lot. The older you get, you look back on periods of your life, you go, how did I do that? What in the world? I had a brand new baby and a son who was 4, a brand new baby girl, and this job. And I would just stay up all night and literally feed my baby girl, and she would sleep in the little basket next to me in the floor, and I would work. I had big pieces of butcher paper in my living room floor, and I would create job descriptions. I'd try and figure out all the tasks there were because there was nothing here. I mean, when I got the job, literally, there was nothing here. I would ask the secretary stayed, and okay, where are the assistant coach's job descriptions? Well, there weren't any. Excuse me? How do you function? Where's the recruiting list? We don't have one. I mean, there was nothing. And so I really had to start from scratch. I would just stay up all night and do that and just kept going. I mean, it was, you look back on it and you go, what in the world? But I was driven and I was excited about it and passionate about it, and you have that adrenaline, and I was, again, surrounded with really good people. I hired Jan Ross immediately, and she was there by my side through the whole thing, helping figure out how to get this thing off the ground.
Can you describe for me, some of us learn what we need and the skills we need for our professions in the classroom or on the job training. Where are some of the places where you learned the skills you need to do your job today?
Most often simply from paying attention, watching people who are good at what they do. It may not even be this business, but watching people who get it and are good at what they do and learning from them. I've had to learn on the fly a lot in this position, particularly about the business side of things, because it's not been my background at all. I tell people that basketball stuff's by far the easiest thing that I do. Basketball is basketball. You go down there and teach, and that's exactly like the court I taught at Norman High. Ceiling's maybe a little bit taller and the lights are brighter, but otherwise it's 94 feet and it's basketball. Everything changed in here. And it really changed in here dramatically in 2002. It was a big jump in 96 when I got the job, but then from 2001 to 2002, the year we went to the national championship game, it went from being a typical Division I program to really being an elite level program that had a lot more involvement, and it was just, it exploded, if you will, and that was another severe learning curve. So a lot of learning on the fly, learning from people, reading, paying attention.
Now, in women's basketball, there's a fair amount of men and women coaches. Are you closer with any women's basketball coaches? Do you guys kind of get together and form a support group, or is it just all competition all the time?
That's an interesting question. I think by and large, I think coaches of men's basketball probably do a better job, men's sports in general, of sharing than women's coaches do. I think we're getting better about it, but my best friends in the business coach men's basketball by far. My closest friends, the guys that I call when I can't figure out why we can't score, or I can't figure out why we're turning the ball over so much, or can't figure out how to guard Tennessee, or whatever the deal is. The guys I call are on the men's side, and I just have some tremendous friends who have been an unbelievable help to me from the word go. An example of that is when I first got this job, I called Roy Williams, who was at the University of Kansas. Never met him before in my life, had no interaction with him whatsoever, and said, I just got this job, and I need to figure out, I don't want to know about your offense and defense. I mean, that's great if you want to tell me about that too, but I need to know how to run my office. I need to know what you expect your staff to do and what's important and how you organize recruiting. And he didn't have any time, but he said in the summer, I go visit every one of my gyms. I think he had 14 gyms in Lawrence that he used for his camps. And he made an appearance in every gym every day. And he said, if you want to come to Lawrence and just go with me from gym to gym and ask me questions, I'll be happy to visit with you about it. And I think he probably thought I wouldn't take him up on it. And I said, I'll be there. So I drove to Lawrence, Kansas, and followed him and rode in the car with him from gym to gym and went to Wendy's drive-thru and had a cheeseburger and asked him 4 million questions and filled up a legal pad full. And he just told me everything. I mean, he would tell me exactly how they did things. And I really sort of designed my office and built my staff approach based on what he did at KU. And as a result of those 2 days I spent in Lawrence, he's one of my dearest friends in the business.
You mentioned earlier the 01-02 season. As a coach, what was that like for you playing in that championship game?
It was a little bit surreal, and I know that's a really vogue word right now and overused probably, but I remember standing on the floor in the Alamo Dome after we beat Duke in the semifinal game, and Connecticut and Tennessee were about to play in the next game. We were going to find out who our opponent would be, and ESPN stopped to interview Stacey Dales and I have a picture. Stace has her arm around me. It's right there in the corner. And we're being interviewed by ESPN, and this side of the Alamo Dome starts Boomer, and this side of the Alamo Dome answers Sooner. And we're doing an interview on ESPN Live, and it was just one of those out-of-body experiences when you go, is this really happening? And it was such an emotionally packed Final Four because it was the anniversary of when this university had dropped the program. And there were lots of individuals who wore red ribbons, people who had no affiliation with the university whatsoever, who wore red ribbons in support of our playing in the championship game and how quickly a thing can turn if people are committed to making it happen. And it was just it was really an experience filled with sentiment on a number of levels.
Overall, throughout your career, can you tell me about any stumbling blocks or adversity that you faced along the way?
Oh, there are stumbling blocks and hurdles every day, every single day. There are those times, I think, at every level you can look back and there's that defining moment when your program had a chance to go one direction or the other. And typically when you go back to those, it has to do with young people making really brave, courageous choices. I can remember a practice here at the University of Oklahoma when we had qualified for the WNIT, which was the first time we had made any postseason appearances. And our guys were tired, and we had an individual workout day, and they didn't really want to do it. And I remember Stacey Dale saying, we're tired, and we're sore, and we just, we need a break. And the conversation that we had at the team that day about pushing through that obstacle and making your way through that thing that's keeping you from being what you want to be. And those kids, that group of kids, always looks back to that. The biggest hurdle at both positions, Norman High School and the University of Oklahoma, was changing perception. That was by far the most difficult thing we had to do, internally and externally. And the only way I know to do that is continuous acts of sincerity, just doing what you say you're going to do over and over and over again, and then eventually people buy in. And I think when you do it that way, it's difficult if there's been a very poor perception. It's difficult to turn it, but then when you do turn it, the loyalty of the group of people who support you is so deep and so strong that it's unwavering. And I think that's one of the reasons people say, you guys play Arkansas Pine Bluff and you have 9,000 people at the game. Why is that? Because it's not about who we play. It's about the product that we put on the floor.
Your student athletes, they're involved in the community. They are, they have high GPAs in the classroom, and they do well on the court. How are you able to have them balance all of these things going on?
It's difficult, especially difficult right now. We're doing this interview end of August, 1st of September. The most difficult period of time for our student athletes are the first 5 weeks of school. The NCAA does not allow us to practice, and only in groups of 4, the current rule. No more than 4. It changes every year, so I have to throw that in there. The current rule. Who knows what it will be next year. But they have lifting in the morning, then they go to class, then they come back and they have individual workouts, and then they have team conditioning, and then they go to tutor appointments, and then they have some night classes. And then, oh, by the way, we want you to go deliver Meals on Wheels for the weekend. And then we have a special Olympics event coming in here on Wednesday morning. And so their calendars are just absolutely full. And it's a great lesson to learn, because they have to figure out, in order to be successful here, you have to figure out that your personal wants and needs and desires might have to move down the ladder just a little bit in order to fulfill what you need to do for all the people who are counting on you. And so it really teaches kids immediately to think outside of themselves, to be about a purpose greater than them. And that's a hard lesson for young people to learn sometimes, but a very valuable one. And so at the end, hopefully kids graduate from here and they want to go be involved in Meals on Wheels in Lubbock, Texas, or wherever they go from this point. But if not, at least they've impacted Norman and Oklahoma while they've been here in school for 4 years. And what we find out is increasingly kids are involved in their community because of the experience they had while they were here.
And you're also pretty involved in the basketball world. I mean, recently you just started your 2-year term as president of the Women's Basketball Coaches Association. Is that a big deal?
Yeah, it's a big deal in terms of workload. I don't know if it's a big deal in any other frame. I said one time jokingly, I'm not sure what I did to get the position. Behaved badly, perhaps. I'm not sure, because it really is. It's another job, but it's an important one. And I began to pay attention 3 or 4 years ago, really to who was making decisions and why decisions were being made. When Marcia Sharp was president of the organization, she was in our conference, and she would come to our conference meetings and talk about, guys, you got to fill out this survey, or you got to talk to your president about this, or you got to talk to your athletic director. And this is the first I'd ever thought about that I played any role whatsoever. It's like having the right to vote and not exercising the privilege. It had never dawned on me that I needed to be involved at the national level. I had so much I needed to say grace over right here, get somebody else to do it, that kind of thing. Well, when Marcia did it, she really brought home the why and the how of it to those of us in this conference. And then when she, we'll just let that ring, maybe we should go. When Marcia finished her tenure as a WBCA president, she really encouraged me to take a position on the board. She said, they're going to come ask you about it, and would you be involved with the board? And I'm not going to tell Marcia no. She was such a great mentor and friend, and remains that to me, that she could ask me just about anything and I'd probably do it. So I took a position on the board, and then when Beth Bass, the current CEO, came and asked me about running for president, I didn't want to do it. I said, Beth, get somebody without children. I have 2 little kids, and my schedule is packed, and I just don't think I can take anything else on. And was finishing a USA basketball commitment, and there's a bit of overlap there. I'm still involved with USA basketball, but only 1 more year. And eventually, it came down to the best way for evil to prevail is for good people to do nothing. I've been taught that since I was a little bitty kid. And so we sit in this position, and not that the whole basketball world was evil and I've got to solve it. I don't mean that at all. Just that sometimes we sit in this position, all of us behind our desk, and say, somebody needs to do something about this. but we're all too busy or too tired or too otherwise engaged to do it. And I thought it was important to be involved and to follow the example that Marcia and others had set. So I agreed to do it, and I've enjoyed it so far. I've learned so much. And I've met some really neat people through the process too. So while it is a lot of work, I think it'll also be a lot of fun. It will be very rewarding.
Can you go into a key moment in your career that you consider one of your biggest highlights?
Wow. That one may take some thought. They come in all forms. So this summer, I was at a recruiting event in Augusta, Georgia, and doing what we all do, going to the Nike tournament and watching the next great players play, and called Caton Hill, who was a former player of mine, was on the 2002 national runner-up team, and is in medical school and was doing her pre-residency there at the military hospital. Felicia Whaley, who was my very first signee here, is now a nurse in the Army, and she is stationed in Augusta, Georgia. And got Caton and Felicia together at the hotel, had dinner, and Felicia's in her full uniform. She's a military nurse, and talking about when she goes to Iraq, it will be upcoming probably within the next year. And Caton in her medical business, she's been making rounds that morning, and just to see those two guys and to know how accomplished they are as a result of their education and their experience here, and to hear them talk about what it means. Just this week, one of my former players got her stockbroker's license and passed a test that only 18% of the people in the country pass. Stacey Dales and what she's doing on ESPN. The most defining moments come after they stop playing, when they go out into the world and they become these really, really neat people and make such a difference where they are. That's the best part. That's the most defining part.
When you were notified that you were going to be inducted into the Oklahoma Women's Hall of Fame, tell me what was going through your mind at that time.
I'm not possibly old enough. It's one of those things where, I think about the female pioneers in the state, and they're women who are legendary. I think of Christy Gaylord Everest and Mary Jane Noble, and people who I have followed from afar for years and years and years, and the impact that they've had on literally millions of people is astounding. And so to be mentioned in their company is kind of a thing that's a stretch for me.
Do you remember who presented you at the ceremony?
I did not go to the ceremony. I had a game, a competition, and so Kim Henry accepted on behalf of me.
How do you feel that now, you have these players who are out, doing great things, and even young girls looking to become coaches in the future? How do you feel that now they look at you as a role model?
Well, I think that I have a close relationship and would consider myself a close friend with the majority of my former players, and the fact that they come by and they come back and we exchange Christmas cards and they let me know where they are. That piece of it, that's the best part of this job. And occasionally, you get the letter of the kid who is a high school coach and a high school teacher and a coach because of the way you mentored them, and they want to do that for other students. And I keep a letter up there from Tina Taylor. She was a senior that I inherited here at the University of Oklahoma. She was the only senior when I took over the program in '96 that stayed, and she went on to be a high school teacher and is a head high school coach now, and sent me a beautiful letter that I keep. I'm not ever going to put it in a drawer. It sits right up there on the bulletin board. Just of thanks for the mentorship that I provided, and that she hoped that she could do that for another.
How important is it for you to be able to coach in your home state of Oklahoma?
Oh, I think it adds. I mean, this is an incredible profession, and to be able to coach at a university of this magnitude is a special thing, but to be born and raised in this state, I was growing up in a household where, all the OU football games were not on TV, but they were on the radio. And so you just, whatever you were doing, the roughhousing and the playing and the screaming, you stopped on Saturday afternoon because the game was on. I mean, you knew it. And that's just what we did. The radio was on in every room in the house, so in case you walked from room to room, you didn't miss a play. I mean, it was a big deal. So I stood in line for Tinker Owen's autograph. I always tell Steve, it wasn't your autograph I wanted, it was your brother's. I was all about Tinker. But just like every little fan growing up in Oklahoma, waiting for him to come out of the tunnel after games and get autographs. And this was the state institution. I mean, this was the best place you could go. And so to ultimately work here it's just sometimes incomprehensible to me.
What would be your advice to women that plan to follow in your footsteps?
Could probably write a book on that, but probably the boldest piece of advice would be you don't lose who you are. I think sometimes women get into a profession that is typically male dominated and they feel like they have to be a guy to do that. You don't. You are in that role because there are very specific and extraordinary things that you bring to the table because you are female. Don't trade those in or leave those at the door when you walk in, because those things help you do your job in a very unique way. And when you do move into that profession, you don't have to do it like the person to your right or to your left or the one that came before. You have to put your own stamp on it, and whatever you do, do it in your way.
When history is written about you, what would you like for it to say?
That I made a difference, that I enjoyed what I did on a daily basis and let people see my passion for people, for basketball, and most importantly for life, and that I made them think about what their passion is, that I made a difference.
And if you could tell your fellow Oklahomans anything, what would you tell them?
Thank you for making this such an extraordinary place to live. Honestly, as I grew up here and I thought this is how it was, and I began to recruit and visit different states and different types of people and figured out that this place is extraordinary. And the more we bring outside people in and expose them to our way, for lack of a better term, they're drawn into it too. And very rarely do I ever bring somebody here that's never been to Oklahoma before that they don't leave and go, wow, what a unique place. So thank you for being real and for making this a place where people feel special.
And can you tell me something about the people you'd like to thank that help play an important role in your life?
Tell you something about them?
Sure. Who would you like to thank, or
oh gosh,
who do you credit your success to?
There are so many people who have been influential who I would not be where I am today without. It begins with my family, obviously, my mom and my dad and my granny, and my papa, who's deceased. My brother, who lives in Edmond and is my biggest fan, goes right through my high school coach and into college, where Dan Hayes and Stephanie Finley helped teach me the game of basketball, where Dr. Daryl Tippins taught me how to teach Shakespeare, where Lynn McMillan taught me how to make the scripture real in my daily life, right into the people that I work with now here at the University of Oklahoma. I've just been very, very blessed.
Outside of having another successful season, obviously, what do you see yourself doing in the future? Do you think you'll continue coaching? Do you think you'll just retire somewhere and hide away, or write a book, or what do you think you want to do?
There are lots of things I want to do. Lots of things I want to do. Writing a book is one of them. That's a project that takes an inordinate amount of time, and I don't know that I'll ever be able to squeeze it in while I'm doing this job, but that's something I want to do one day. I love to work in my garden. I love flowers and trees and landscaping, and would love to be involved with that in some way. But I really love to write. That's one of my passions, and at some point I want to hole away in a cottage on a beach and write a book.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Gosh, I don't think so. Give you my blood type if you're interested.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to meet with us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.